When I first was put in charge of the Turok project, it was based on a Valiant Comics publication called Turok Dinosaur Hunter. They said, let's find one of the ones that's actually a pretty consistent seller, one that we think's got some potential. So we decided that that would be Turok. The notion of kind of living in this lost land where time didn't have a meaning, where you had, creatures from the future, creatures from the past, dinosaurs, aliens, everything that you want. That's what attracted me to it. And my job was to determine how Turok could be made into a video game.
Only one man with mammoth firepower and a taste for big game can make dinosaurs extinct again. Turok Dinosaur Hunter.
At the time, first-person shooters were really coming into the fold. I mean, big time. Doom 2 had already been released. Quake had not quite been released. People were playing Duke Nukem 3D. All these first-person shooters were becoming just absolutely the genre to have on the PC. What we had just around the corner was a generation of gaming consoles that were now three-dimensional machines. They were designed to create 3D worlds. The decision to make a first-person shooter seemed like a good business decision to me, but it also seemed like the perfect vehicle to create the kinds of worlds and the level of immersion that I wanted in the game. The first question was, how do we make it different? Everybody was doing bricks and castles and scary skulls and, demons and things like that. We wanted to create a world that lived around the player. So what Turok Dinosaur Hunter brought to games was a more realistic environment than anybody had ever seen before, with more actual indigenous life in it than had ever been done. And it created a level of realism and motion that had never been accomplished before. And it also created probably the most insane arsenal of weapons that anybody had ever seen at the time. And that mixed together made Turok Dinosaur Hunter, an instant hit. And something that still kind of warms the heart of many a hardcore gamer in the world today.
Only evil this dark could bring him back. Only a game this big could do him justice. Turok 2, Seeds of Evil.
When we moved on to Turok 2, we made a couple of very significant improvements technically. The first one being the inclusion of soft-skinned enemies. The actual skin on the body of the enemy could actually stretch and pull, which meant that joints didn't crash through one another, and the result of that was that you could actually create mouths that opened and stretched, expressions that changed, fat that bounced up and down if the guy had a big gut. Lots of really neat effects could be created with soft skinning, and we pushed that further than we'd seen that pushed in a video game before. The next important innovation that Turok 2 brought to the table was real-time lighting. Rockets could actually fire glows. Tracer bullets actually lit up the environment around them, and that was something that on a console was fairly unprecedented at the time. The next thing that we did for Turok 2 that is probably the most significant change for that game was the inclusion of high-resolution graphics. For the first time, you're playing a console game at resolutions that you could only play on a PC before. And it really took the realism of the game to another level. The high-resolution graphics actually made the game visually probably the most stunning console game anybody had ever seen at the time. And Turok 2 also brought a bigger story. It brought more outrageous enemies. The enemies got bigger. The environments got more exotic. And the cinematic quality that we added to it via the game intros was really great.
Greetings, Turok. I am Adon. The elders of the Lost Land, known as the Lazarus Concordance, have charged me with the task of guiding you on your quest to stop the Primogen. The Primogen seeks to destroy the 5 energy totems that keep him imprisoned within the wreckage of his lightship. If he succeeds in destroying all 5 energy totems, he will be freed, and the blast wave of temporal energy unleashed will destroy your universe. You must stop the Primogen, Turok.
Turok Rage Wars was a project that we undertook with the ambition really to create the first dedicated multiplayer game on a console. Everybody expected there to be a multiplayer component to every Turok game. The problem was that we were always trying to bolt on a second game, on top of the single-player adventure. Multiplayer games had become very popular with the release of Turok 2 and GoldenEye. We decided, why can't we release a dedicated multiplayer game on the N64? Faster frame rate, better weapons, new game modes, new effects, and Rage Wars was very, very well received, sold well, and really told us that gamers actually do have a place for this sort of product. Then came Turok 3.
What's wrong? Are the nightmares back?
The child.
Shadow of Oblivion was perhaps maybe too much of a departure from the origin of the series, but it was an excellent game in its own right in that, once again, it broke ground that hadn't been broken on a console before, especially with a cartridge format. We created fully three-dimensional real-time cinematics with lip sync, facial expression. It was a much more story-driven game. The intro to the game itself, wowed press from around the world when they saw it, because once again, they'd never seen something like that done in real time to that level of quality.
If the family dies, the lineage dies. If the Turok line does not continue, the balance will falter. If that happens...
What? Joshua, what will happen? Please tell me.
Oblivion.
What we decided to do for Turok 3 was recreate the system whereby we made game worlds. The tools at the time were based around a method that basically involved assembling the world in 3 dimensions like a puzzle. By doing that, we saved a lot of memory, but the downside is that the worlds actually had more of a generic and kind of graph paper look to them. So we completely redid the system that we created worlds with. When Turok 3 came out, you had a level of detail, a view distance, and a level of immersion in the environments because of these changes that really took them to an all-new level of excellence. Each one of these games is groundbreaking in its own right. We don't rest on our laurels with Turok. Turok is not about being conservative, it's not about being safe, it's about being aggressive, it's about being bold, and it's about being more than a little, ambitious. Every new chapter in the Turok series is something unprecedented not only to us, but we hope to gamers everywhere.